All right, welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're in the workshop and we're going to start part 1 of our Leo Jaymz BC Kit build. Today is going to be all about test fitting, sanding, and sealing. All right, that's what we're going to be heading out today doing. And so we're in the workshop and I'm going to go ahead and switch the camera around and we're going to go ahead and get started with our test fitting. All right, guys, so we're going to start off just by test fitting the neck to the neck pocket. I always like to check that to make sure that we have enough room to get that neck in there and that it's a good tight fit and that it's not loose or it's going to need to be shimmed. So we actually just want to check that first. So we're going to take our block here, our little cork block, and just prop that up so we can see if that's going to be a good fit in there. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, if I can do that, let go like that, and it doesn't move, okay, it doesn't lift up, doesn't come out, that's a good fit into that pocket. Okay, so that is a real nice tight fit. Looks like it's got the right angle, so I don't think we're going to have to shim it at all. Maybe just a little bit if we want just a little bit less of an angle, but I think it's good right where it is. Once we get the screws in there, it's going to pull it down too. So no, that looks pretty good. Yeah, I saw in the comments from last week's video, somebody asked about the razor blade in the 12th fret, because that's totally not a BC Rich Beast. And keep in mind, this is a tribute to the BC Rich Beast, so it's going to be off. It's not exactly the same as the Beast. But yeah, the razor blade in the 12th fret was never a BC Rich thing. That was a Dean Dimebag Darrell Razorback that had that. So yeah, I think what we're looking at here is a, you know what, that looks really cool kind of a moment. So who knows? But yeah, so we've got a good fit on the neck that's nice and tight, so I think we're going to be good to go with that. So today we're going to sand the body down, get it sealed. That's going to be our goal for today, is to get that sanded down and sealed, and we should be good from there. When it comes to sanding, you want to start off, I like to start off with a 320 grit sandpaper, especially because this has already been sanded to 220. I can tell just by the feel of it, it's already been sanded to 220. Okay guys, so right here we've got a sanding sponge, a 320 grit from Gator. It's a super sponge, and they call it a finishing sponge. I don't really call it a finishing sponge, but it's about what you need, and it's double-sided. You can feel it, okay? And I love to use sanding sponges because they are a sanding block. So they do stay nice and firm and flat. But when you get around areas like this, you can contour. When you're sanding a guitar body like this, you want to just go in one direction, back and forth with the grain, okay, like that. That's what I like to do. I've seen people do it all kinds of different ways. Big circles, you know, against the grain, which makes me crazy. But I like to go with the grain. So we're going to start just by sanding this front face, just like so. Make sure you have some naphtha available. Make sure you sand all these areas. Okay, very important to sand all these areas. And what you're looking to do when you do this is just get rid of that little bit of roughness that you have on every guitar body that you get in a kit. Okay, every one of them has it. And you'll feel it when you're sanding it. You'll feel it when you get rid of that. When you get rid of that roughness, it'll smooth out and you'll feel it. You know, and you can feel it with your hand. Yeah, and that's already worlds better. So now, it doesn't take very long to do this. Okay, but you got to make sure when you're doing it. You see, this has a beveled edge on it. Okay, and you can really see it here. You want to make sure that you get that beveled edge as well. All right, and you can pretty much just kind of go along with the edge. And get that sanded nice and smooth. Now with that beveled edge, I'm just going to follow the edge because it's part of the end grain down here. So I'm just going to follow that along. Real nice like that. Okay. Don't forget these little grooves right here. You want to make sure that you sand in there. Okay, get that nice and smooth. Okay, now I'm not going to bore you with sanding this whole guitar body. Okay guys, so we are done sanding. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our shop vac. We're going to vacuum up all this dust. We got to make sure that we get rid of all this dust before we actually try to seal the grain. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so the shop vac gets that loose dust off of there and out of the cavities and things like that. But there is still dust on this body. You can feel it. Okay, you can even see it. So now is when we're going to go ahead and we're going to wipe the body down with just a paper towel and some naphtha. I like to use naphtha because it does not raise the grain. Okay, and it's harmless with the sealers and the paints. So it works really, really well for cleaning off the body. Like I said, I'm just going to take a paper towel, just kind of fold it up like so, and just take our naphtha. Okay. Get that soaking up in there. Okay, so we just take our naphtha and then we just go ahead and we wipe this down. And this is going to get all that dust off of there. And the naphtha will just evaporate. It'll just dry right out. Make sure to re-soak the cloth too every now and again, or just fold it over because you're collecting all that dust on there, you can see. So you want to make sure that that's all out of there. Like I said, the beauty of naphtha is it does not raise the grain, because that's one thing we don't want to do. If you use water, some people will use water. I don't like to use water because water will raise the grain, and when you raise the grain, you got to re-sand it to sand that off. And that kind of defeats your purpose of sanding in the first place. Because the whole purpose of sanding is to make sure that everything is nice and smooth. Okay. Wow. Now that we've got that wiped down real good, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe it down with a tack cloth. The tack cloth is really going to get rid of any kind of small particles, anything like that. This is a tack cloth. Pick it up at any hardware store, you know, any place. Doesn't really matter. They're cheap. They're a couple of bucks. You know, they're not expensive, so you can get them just about anywhere. Any hardware store will have them. Walmart has them in their woodworking and painting section, and you can feel it's real tacky. So now I'm going to go ahead and wipe this down with the tack cloth. Okay, now that tack cloth is really going to pick up anything that's any kind of residues that are left over on the guitar. That tack cloth is going to grab them. All right, so now this wood, this is mahogany, and mahogany is a very open pored grain. Okay, it is a very, very open pored grain. If we didn't seal it and grain fill it, what would happen is when you go ahead and paint it, you would actually see the texture come through the paint. Okay, because the paint would soak down into the grain. And when the paint soaks down into the grain, you'll see it. Now, there are finishes out there like that. I've seen lots of painted finishes done by professional builders and by you know, guitar manufacturers, where they did that on purpose. They wanted the grain to come through, so they just literally primered it and just painted directly over the grain. For this, we're looking for more of a high gloss finish. Okay, something that's basically going to look like a piece of glass when we're done. So when you're done with your tack cloth, just stick it back in the bag. Okay, this is what I do. I just put it right back. Put it back in the bag and put it in a drawer so it doesn't get exposed to a lot of air. And you'll feel your fingers now are all nice and tacky. So, all right. So now we've got our guitar body. It is all wiped down, free of residue, and we're ready to start sealing. All right. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a grain sealer called Solarez. All right. Solarez is a UV cured grain sealer. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply the Solarez, and we're going to do that with a sponge. And after we apply the Solarez, we're going to walk it outside into the light, just rotate it a few times, and it will cure in 3 to 5 minutes. You can't even understand how much time that saves us. So let's go ahead and get ready to apply our Solarez. We're going to do the front and the sides first, and then we will flip it and do the back, and then we'll stand it up, okay, on the edges there, and we'll do our back side and get our back side done. I've gotten pretty good at holding the guitar body like this so that I'm not touching the resin. I always recommend wearing gloves whenever you're working with any kind of chemical product. All right, always wear gloves when you're working with that kind of stuff. It's just a good practice. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, we're ready to go ahead and get started. We've got our Solarez. And we're just going to pour some out. Kind of about like that. Take our sponge. Okay, we're going to start getting a nice even coat on the guitar here. We want to spread it out, like I said, nice and even. I want to get it on the sponge. And once we get it on here, we're going to let it sit for about 3 to 5 minutes to just kind of even out. And what's nice about it is when you let it sit for 3 to 5 minutes, you just let it sit out there. What it does is it levels out. It levels out real nice. Okay, and I just like to kind of go over it, make sure I got that bevel covered. All right, you don't want to try, you want to kind of spread it out, but you want to make sure that you're not getting a lot of this stuff in any of those holes. I just kind of go around the hole and not like right over top of it. And once I've gone around it like that, then I will just kind of take it straight down. Now keep in mind, you are going to have to sand this. Okay, you are going to have to sand it for sure. There's no doubt about that. Okay, so make sure you got a good coat. Get a little bit more right there. Make sure you get a nice coat on there. And all you need really is a few drops, especially on this end grain. It spreads really well. Don't get it in the neck pocket. And I forgot to put down my paper towel. I'm going to regret that later. And now let's get our back. Now I try to go with the grain as much as I possibly can. I try to check all my angles to make sure I'm getting coverage. You want to make sure to try and avoid any runs. As Johnny Bench used to say, no runs, no drips, no errors. Some of you may remember that. So now, what we're doing is we are waiting for this to cure, or not waiting for it to cure, sorry. Let me just go over it real quick with my eyeballs. Make sure we got coverage here. Wipe those edges, because that's where you get your runs a lot of the time. Flip it around. Now I know you can't really see this, but I've got it good and covered. Now what I'm going to do, now that I've got that covered, is just let it sit for a few minutes. Okay, and then we're going to walk it out into the sunlight. Okay guys, so now we're going to go ahead out into the sunlight. And we're just going to kind of rotate it around. Now that we're in the sunlight, it is curing as we speak. Alright, so as soon as this cures, we'll go ahead and pick up with our first sand off. Alright guys, so now this is fully cured. We brought it in from outside and it is ready to go. You can see here, I've got the Solar Res on there pretty heavy. So I'm going to use a sander to knock it down because it's got a pretty thick coat on there. So I'm hoping that that's going to be more than enough to give us what we need to fill this grain in. Alright, so because you're actually supposed to scrape off the extra with like a credit card or something like that before you cure it. And yep, I forgot to do that. So we do have a pretty heavy coat on here. So let's go ahead and I'm going to use a sander with some 220 to knock it down and see what it looks like. I'm going to do it on the back first, and you got to be very careful when you're using a sander in a situation like this because you can very quickly take it straight down to the wood again, to the bare wood, and go further than the sealer, and you don't want to do that. Okay, that's definitely something you don't want to do. So, yeah, you got to be very, very careful. So let's go ahead and give it a shot and see what we get. So the Solar Res, what's really nice about it is it when you sand it, it powders up beautifully. I mean, it really powders up beautifully. So it sands out real nice. Yeah, there's only a couple of spots over here I got to hit. I'm going to hit those real quick. Alright, that's feeling pretty good. I think from there we got a nice, real nice flat surface here. I think from there we can definitely do fill in primer, scratch primer to fill those little spots in. Now I'm going to do the sides here with a sponge. Get those done real nice. I'm just doing the flat surfaces, the big flat surfaces with the sander. Check my paper. Paper's looking pretty good. Not too much buildup on there. That's all right. So I'm just going to keep sanding. I'm not going to make you guys stand here and watch me sand this top out. I'm going to finish sanding the top out. Then I'll sand the sides with a sponge and we'll be good to go. All right, guys. So she is sanded and sealed. The grain is sealed in there real nice. Don't feel any grain at all. I haven't wiped this down yet, but all the end grain is all sealed up and beautifully. As a matter of fact, the Solar Res product is really a fantastic product. As you can see, I've got to vacuum everything up here, but and then I'm going to wipe the body down with some naphtha, and then we're going to move on to next week's video, which is going to be priming, painting, color sanding, and clear coating. Hopefully. More than likely we'll get to priming and we'll get the black base coat on and get that sanded, and that'll be next week's video. Alright, so yeah, this Solar Res product, fantastic product, really works well. Definitely seals in that grain really nice and fills it in beautifully. This is just absolutely flat and smooth. So the paint should come out fantastic. So yeah, definitely some beautiful stuff. You just take this off here so you can see it. Here we are. Flip it over here for you, like so. Okay, so all right, so we've got her all sanded and sealed and ready for our first coat of primer. And that's going to be about it for this week. So guys, thanks for being with me in the workshop here at Guitar Yourself, and we'll see you next week when we get to priming this and putting on our first coats of paint. I'm excited. I can't wait to get started on that. So we'll see you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you like videos like this. And we'll see you next time at Guitar Yourself.